Come one, come all, prepare to be amazed. This is Challenger Approaching, where we take a character who isn't playable in Smash Bros. Yet and go deep into detail on how they could work if they got in for real. Our show today features a rising star captivating crowds the world over, a master magician so attuned with nature that trees grow and flowers bloom at their beck and call, a spectacle for all ages, and admission is just the low price of however much the next Smash game costs. But will everything line up to make this performance a reality? With so much left to chance right now, will this budding star earn an invite to the grandest of stages? And if so, what tricks and tools might they choose for such a paramount performance? So, let's begin. Are you watching closely? Meowscarada! Meowscarada is the fully evolved form of Sprigatito, the grass-type starter of the Paldea region in Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. The species embodies the design and mannerisms of a magician, not a true magic user, a stage magician. Though they can create and control plant life like a typical grass type, their powers also involve misdirecting foes with trickery and illusions. For example, that flower there is actually part of their body, but the stem it's attached to is rendered invisible so it looks like it's floating. Fitting of the dark secondary type they pick up in this form, and differently than the type's usual malice, underhanded tactics, or pure darkness. But a magician needs to act the part too, and this is a species of showmen in ways both good and bad. Bit notorious they are for being high maintenance. Never fully growing out of the base form's need for constant attention, they tend to sulk when their trainers or other loved ones dote on someone else. But aspiring champions who work through the rough spots will find themselves a loyal companion with impressive skill in battle and a flair for the dramatic. Starter Pokemon are always a big deal, but every generation nowadays has had one that gets a little better billing than the others, and this time, that seems to be Meowscarada. Featured front and center in a lot of promotional stuff, has a notoriously strong, albeit nerfed, hidden ability in the type-changing Protean, and the anime's brand new protagonist has a Sprigatito as her signature mon. Even has a strong presence in the TCG already. Pick a card, any card. Now remember it. And the pockets of Smash talk there's been lately has noticed all of this. Fans see this super important starter and can practically envision the invite already. Half because there are still people wanting a fully evolved grass type on the roster, but this particular one already has a lot of fans. And there has been at least one spot reserved for a Pokemon newcomer in every Smash Bros. Title. In fact, Meowscarada's biggest obstacle might be timing. Each generation only sticks around for 3 years nowadays, and while that might change, hopefully so the devs get more time to do their thing, this Gen 9 character will only have a chance as long as Gen 9 is in the spotlight. The biggest question then is, will opportunity knock before Gen 10 hits its stride and takes the spotlight away? But if an invite is in the cards, how could Meowscarada fight in Smash? Getting this challenger's appearance down is straightforward. The model that already exists doesn't need much extra magic to get working in Smash. Everything transfers over pretty well. The lithe build, the shifty eyes, the flower collar and cape, the big hands, long legs, and mysterious mask with ears tucked back behind it. What, didn't notice those before? It'd be an easier transfer than ever before for a Pokemon character, since Scarlet and Violet started giving every mon detailed textures. All Smash would need to do is amplify the fluffiness further. Thematics, though, that's more interesting. We can take all the magician cliches and roll with them. A confident and kinda smug default stance, dramatic and eye-catching poses during attacks, overselling it when getting hit. Hey, craving attention is a species-wide trait. Could even have an idle animation where they brush at one arm and gesture toward it, as if saying, nothing up my sleeve. This character could just be really fun to see in motion if handled right. How about alternate costumes? First, the default. Every performer's got a signature look. Next, 2 counterpart alts, one shaded orange with a complementary blue, the other a rich gray color backed up by a light yellow, based on the color schemes of Scarlet and Violet's regional academies. Following behind them is a blue and reddish-orange palette based on the Blueberry Academy from the Indigo Disc DLC, which I think is fair game for small nods like this. For the rest, we have a muted palette with shades of brown, based on the Iberian Lynx, Meowscarada's real-world counterpart, and an alt with shades of pink and red based on Japanese cherry blossoms, maybe also skitty if you squint a little. Then a striking alt with icy colors based on the legendary Qin Pao. Hopefully not too much of a reach for a grass type. The magician motif makes tapping into less natural colors more believable. Finally, we have an alt with 3 shades of green and wait, that's just Sprigatito's palette. Well, if it works. Meowscarada's fighting style should, ideally, be informed by the line's canon stats, abilities, and lore. Pulling that off will require an unusual hybrid class. Smash already has a few quote-quote half-zoners already, characters who have some tools to control space with, but less comprehensively than full zoners, in exchange for being able to fight directly more easily. I think that's the most in character for this character, able to do a mix of zoning and brawling with extra flexibility, but their zoning tools can still be outgunned and their up-close stuff outclassed by specialists. This is a magician though, and that comes with an emphasis on traps and setups. With all kinds of indirect ways to set up combos or knockouts, players would be encouraged and rewarded for constantly tricking opponents with galaxy brain setups that also dazzle anyone watching. Can also use the threat of said traps as a bait to manipulate and misdirect your foes into doing what you want. And Meowscarada's exact stats paint an even more interesting picture. Sized up a little like most Pokemon in Smash, a species that averages about 5 feet tall normally is a foot and change taller here. Low weight and lackluster defenses in canon also put him on the lower end of the lightweight class, a dangerous combination with being such a big target, especially with high fall speed that makes most combos work on them for wider percent ranges. Minimizing how often you get hit is key, and Meowscarada is more than capable of that. The fastest starter we've seen yet, 1 point faster than Greninja, transfers into Smash with top 10 mobility on the ground and top 20 in the air. Before you freak out about the part zoner character being so fast, there are caveats. The high fall speed has downsides as previously mentioned, and their initial dash is only 25th best, making quick getaways a bit trickier. Meowscarada's attack stats are more complex than the numbers make him look. Has a lot of decently fast moves that can rack up damage on opponents, especially if you're hitting your setups. But this moveset only has a few reliable finishers. Others are tricky to use or take a while to actually take stocks. If you're misdirecting opponents well enough, you'll get more chances to land the strong stuff or confirm into the weaker stuff closer to the blast zones. But if not, you might find your foes hanging on for longer than you'd want. Meowscarada's moveset can be a sight to behold, but let's start with the basics first. Our opening act, a jab combo where they press forward with one palm, then the other, then finish with a diagonal claw swipe. With good speed by zoner-ish standards and okay damage, it works if you need a quick disruptor. Forward tilt's like the last part of the jab, but more so, reaching forward with a more pronounced horizontal swipe that you can angle up or down if you so choose. A pretty simple attack that pokes at people like forward tilts usually do. The fancier stuff comes in elsewhere. Oh hey, here's something interesting. Meowscarada grabs the quote-quote floating flower by its base and swings it in a big arc overhead. An anti-air move that's the slowest tilt to the set, but covers a large area, combos for a while, and even has a slight disjoint. Meowscarada's down tilt starts with a snap of the fingers of their free hand while crouched down, creating a small, circular cluster of leaves at ground level. Pretty fast, but with extra end lag tacked on, its knockback allows for follow-ups early on and eventually starts to KO, at like 160. If you have to use it for that, something went wrong. Wrapping up the set is a dash attack inspired by a move new to Gen 9. Meowscarada plants both feet down while running, then leaps forward with a flying tackle that kicks up a few blades of grass in the process. A pretty far-reaching burst option, great for catching landings, calling out dashbacks, or following up certain traps. Doesn't KO, but does set up advantage states. Alright, you've waited long enough. Here's some cool stuff. Meowscarada's forward smash has them pivot back a step, grab the flower again with one hand, then dramatically thrust it forward as it unleashes a chain of 3 explosions. Think like the ones on a few of Ivysaur's attacks visually. While it's powerful and lasts a good few frames, the move's high startup makes it impractical to use. Save it for big reads. Meowscarada's up smash isn't so slow, as they spin one hand horizontally above, creating a swirling whirlwind of leaves that pulls opponents in for multiple hits before a final blow sends them upward. Fast startup for a smash attack and a surprisingly wide hitbox makes it very good at catching errant jumps or following up certain traps. It's also one of the weakest up smashes knockback-wise, killing only a little earlier than Mithra's. What do you expect from a Leaf Storm off a mediocre special attack stat? Then for the down smash, Meowscarada suddenly short hops in place, aims down, and slashes outward with both hands. The motion lines on this one are darker and thicker for emphasis, dealing a pretty strong hit as you evade low attacks completely while punishing anyone who attempted one by you. Gets you out of the way pretty quickly, but the actual hit takes a while to come out, like with similar down smashes. Alright, Aerial's next. For our next trick, a move that comes from somewhere surprising. Pulling from the trading card game, Meowscarada spins rapidly in place, striking multiple times with the long leaves that make up their cape. A pretty fast multi-hit nair that breaks out of pressure. It has potential drag down combos as well. Forward air is less intricate, a mid-air claw slash and a rising arc that deals forward knockback. Since the hitbox moves up instead of down, it works best when used at the start of a jump instead of when you're falling. Makes it great at swatting away aerial approaches. Meowscarada's back air is fancier, grabbing the flower again, thrusting it back behind them, and letting loose a single explosive blast. Simpler and faster than the forward smash, though still the slowest aerial of the set, its combination of range and good power makes it one of the aforementioned few reliable finishers. Up air is a little different, grabbing the flower again and swinging it above from front to back, and then back to front. Dealing 2 hits that link into each other, it's a long-lasting move for juggling opponents and continuing combos, and it's partially disjointed just like the other flower attacks. Animation's a bit long though, so foes can slip by if you whiff at the wrong time. And Meowscarada's down air is a sudden kick straight down. It isn't very strong and it doesn't spike, but with single-digit frame startup, it's one of the fastest down airs in the game. Favors protection and offensive mix-ups instead of power. Sideways knockback with not a lot of growth, but it can still edgeguard weaker recoveries. Meowscarada's grab game starts out surprisingly plain, with regular grab animations that just reach forward with one hand, though with an extra disappointed expression if you miss. Frame data is slightly slower than the usual for a brawler character, more in line with weapon users instead. Pummel animation is a forceful slap with the back of their free hand. It's on the stronger but slower end of pummels. Meowscarada's throws are where things get fun again. Their forward throw forcefully strikes the opponent with a downward swing of their free hand as if trying to disarm them. Won't actually knock an item loose because it's been adapted to deal damage off a grapple instead, but it does send foes at a low angle that sets up edge guards. And the back throw has Meowscarada fling the opponent behind them while striking a flashy pose, killing eventually, but not until 150-ish. Up throw summons a small leaf whirlwind around the opponent that sends them upward and deals double-digit damage. And the down throw bounces the opponent off the ground, revealing there's a flower stuck to them that then detonates with a small explosion for a second hit. Deals low enough knockback to even lead into further combos for a while. Finally, let's round this out with a set of taunts. First, an up taunt where Meowscarada takes a bow, perfect for showing off after doing something impressive. Side taunt has him strike some kind of appealing pose to win over the crowd. Might involve blowing a kiss if the devs feel particularly bold. Rounding them out is a down taunt that borrows an in-game idle animation that is too good to pass up. Now you see it, now you don't. Now for the part you've been waiting for. Let's tie everything together with a set of specials that confound the competition. And what better way to do that than a neutral special that is exactly what you expected. Flower Trick is Meowscarada's signature move, an explosive physical grass-type attack that makes up for its subpar power by being a guaranteed critical hit with perfect accuracy. But how do we put that in Smash in a reasonable way? Well, on use, Meowscarada brings their flower to their hand as it blooms, then lobs it forward. It's actually a different, separate plant, and now that it's loose, it can be picked up or thrown like an item. However, it's on a timer. Once about 8 seconds have passed, it detonates in a chain of explosions that deal 3 hits with decent knockback. But that's not all. If no one is currently holding the flower, you can press B again to detonate it early. While there's a slight delay when it blows up this way, the resulting explosions are bigger and deal more damage. And while the knockback isn't enough to KO on its own, you can act quickly enough to follow them up with another attack if you're nearby. A tilt, an aerial, even an up smash is possible, especially off the weaker automatic detonation. An explosive trap with more options and control than any other, Flower Trick is perfect for keeping opponents on their toes. The more you vary how you use it, the easier it is to catch someone off guard and set up a proverbial critical hit. It does require some advanced planning, since you toss the flower automatically at the start instead of it starting in your hands, and once the flower is close to going off on its own, it does glow and pulsate as a warning. And you can get hit yourself if you're not careful. This is one act that takes some rehearsal to get the hang of. But that's just the opening act. What's next? How about? Alright then. A recurring grass-type move the line learns early, Magical Leaf isn't that strong, but it compensates by also having perfect accuracy, and we're going to interpret that differently than with the last move. Press forward and B, and Meowscarada summons a trio of bladed leaves that float in place behind them in a spread formation. After a moment's pause, the leaves fly forward and converge on a point half a stage length straight ahead, dealing a weak hit at first, but a somewhat stronger one as they near the end and start to glow with magic-like energy. But you're not limited to just straight forward. By holding up or down before the leaves get going, you can adjust the angle they fly at, with the leaves pointing in that direction to telegraph it, letting you aim at targets that are slightly above or below you as well. The most conventional zoning tool in the moveset, Magical Leaf might not be a guaranteed hit, but with 3 projectiles and 3 possible flight paths, it has a lot of flexibility. But it also comes with its own flaws. This is just a half zoner. Since the leaves spawn behind you, you're open to attack until they start moving, making them useless for creating instant walls. The fact that they converge on a single point means they cover a narrower space the further they go. And while the damage is okay once the leaves glow, the knockback is still mediocre, and the early weak hit does so little that your opponents can act before you do. Works best when combining it with your other tools. Up Special is next. There are all kinds of ways to recover, but this magician is also an escape artist. Learned naturally by the Sprigatito line, U-turn deals a physical attack to an enemy, then retreats and swaps out for an ally. Can't work exactly the same way in Smash, so what can we do instead? On use, Meowscarada abruptly performs a rising backflip kick with lime green motion trails that goes roughly as high as Marth and Lucina's Dolphin Slash, striking anyone immediately in front of or above them on the way up with knockback that brings them up with you. Once you reach the apex of the leap, pressing B again follows it up with a dive kick back down that strikes anyone in the way. This one's trajectory is unusual. If used in the air, the initial flip goes straight up, but if you're on the ground, it goes up and backwards slightly at a 120-degree angle, retreating from the point you started at. The dive kick comes back down at around a 60-degree angle, ending at the spot you started if you were grounded, or ahead of it if you started in the air. While it's just decent for recovering, U-turn doubles is Meowscarada's best answer to direct pressure. If an opponent hits your shield with something unsafe, you can throw it out immediately for a 2-hit punish that gives you breathing room. The dive kick doesn't spike, always deals diagonally forward knockback, and whether you do the whole thing or stop after just the first part, you go into freefall afterward. Oh, but we haven't gotten to the fun one yet, because our next trick is a literal one. Trick is an unusual move Meowscarada gets access to once fully evolved that swaps equipped items with your target. Bit gimmicky, but it can be used to force an actively harmful item onto an opponent. Keep that in mind, because our version starts with Meowscarada posing dramatically as a magically conjured spotlight appears immediately above their head and a faint drum roll starts to play. For the next half second, you can press in any cardinal or diagonal direction. Once you do so, the spotlight suddenly moves half a dash length in that direction, and if an opponent is caught by it, the illusory spell grabs them and forces them to switch places with you. Sounds pointless at first, until you remember what the original move does. While the two of you are swapped, your items aren't. If they were holding something, a turnip, gyro, bonus fruit, anything, you take it for yourself upon appearing in their place. And Meowscarada just so happens to grab hold of a flower bomb right before the swap happens, forcing the other fighter to take it when they reappear just in time for it to blow up in their face. It sounds complicated, but basically, Trick is a command grab with more potential angles than any other that swaps positions with someone and deals a moderate amount of damage while stealing any item they're holding. It's a bunch of utility wrapped in one move that opens up a lot of mix-ups, especially since you can use it in the air. For extra fun, stand below a flower trick bomb and catch someone with this so they're sent into that explosive right as you set it off, then follow the whole thing up with an aerial. Just make sure you catch someone. This move has a lot of end lag if it whiffs. Now we need a showstopper of a final smash. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, it's time for the grand finale. Channeling the Smash Ball's power, Meowscarada strikes a pose as they terastalize without the need for a Terra Orb, gaining a layer of crystalline armor and a rather silly-looking crown of flowers as their powers over nature strengthen twofold. Gathering this strength given through their Terra type toward a single point forward, they fire a brilliant ray of natural energy straight ahead with near infinite range, damaging and stunning anyone in the way as the power latches to them, and the crowd goes wild as a string of massive massive explosions go off, centered on each and every fighter that was struck. The act complete, the Terra energy dissipates, and the battle resumes. This is how Meowscarada could fight in Smash, a masked master of magical manipulation and misdirection with plants and illusory shadows at their beck and call, putting on a show that flusters foes and captivates crowds. With prominence and uniqueness in spades, they're a clear favorite currently to become a newcomer next time, but time will tell if that opportunity will come. Meowscarada has an unusual set of skills for controlling space and setting up traps with which to threaten opponents. Competent brawling and spacing tools make them a better fighter up close than zoners typically are, able to throw hands directly if necessary, and with all kinds of ways to trick opponents with setups into big damage or easier knockouts, this is a master of mind games. However, being a hybrid class also means their zoning tools are incomplete, with more blind spots than a dedicated zoner would have. Being both light and easily comboed is an unforgiving combination that cannot afford to get outsmarted defensively. And that holds true on offense too. Having scarce few good finishers means taking stocks quickly requires having good mind games. Development on this one was really all or nothing. A lot of the moveset actually came together really easily, but the parts that didn't took a lot of brainstorming to get right. Neutral and down specials especially. I'm still not 100% satisfied with how Flower Trick works, but hey, also not sure about having two moves named Trick in the specials either, and the down special's nature as a 360-degree command grab might be too powerful. Would need playtesting. I also considered other alt costumes inspired by other feline Pokémon, and I could see some of them happening for real, but none felt quite right on my end. Hopefully I've conveyed the potential of what has become one of my most wanted newcomers for Smash 6. What can I say? Elemental powers and magic motifs are my kind of thing. So I'm interested/invested in seeing if this one pans out so I can actually get one of my most wanted newcomers next time. Especially with a remote chance another of my favorites could tag along as an Echo Fighter. Maybe a few of those A-button attacks felt familiar? Special thanks to these people for helping with this video. Thanks to my patrons as well for the continued support. And now, it's their turn to take the stage. Anyone supporting me on Patreon, for as little as $1 per month, can vote on which of these three characters gets to go next. Got a potential remake of an older challenger in the running for this one. So, until next time, was this your card?